2025, and Carney's conflict of interests continues. And are we going to get any kind of justice at all? Are we going to even get a real investigation? No, probably not, right? Investigations are kind of meaningless. Worst case scenario, he gets convicted of doing something wrong and then a slap on the wrist occurs, right? Just like they used to do to Justin Trudeau, maybe a $500 fine. But for a billionaire like Carney, that doesn't matter so much. Maybe he'll use it towards his teeth whitening. Uh-oh. Can't say too mean a joke because somebody might sue you. Anyway, supply management and the dairy sector. Trump is targeting supply management within the context of the trade war that is happening between the United States and Canada. And that's interesting to watch. It's very, very interesting because supply management in Canada is almost a sacred cow. You don't cross the dairy cartel, right? And if you do cross the dairy cartel, well, boy, howdy, there's going to be a lot of university students who are crowding up all of your social feeds to tell you what a terrible person you are. Trust me, I've got firsthand experience. So if anybody threatens their sacred cow, they will attack, right? And so they just can't attack Donald Trump. So they'll do the next best thing and tell all of their assets to attack Donald Trump. And that's okay because everybody's telling all of their assets to attack Donald Trump. It's interesting to watch. Jobs for teens. Question, did the teen grow up in India? Because if yes, then we've got lots of jobs for teens. But if the teen grew up in Canada, no, I'm sorry, there's no jobs here. And well, mass migration is to blame, unfortunately. And there are people talking about that, and we'll talk about that later in the show. Biden auto pen. This is a big, big scandal. But I mean, the whole Biden administration was a big, big scandal. We'll see if this one sticks or if anybody goes to jail for this. I haven't seen any arrests for any slam dunk cases. And the seemingly little bits of justice we get seem to be slipping away in their relevance and importance day by day. So it's very, very interesting. But we'll see if the Biden auto pen thing is a bigger deal than the Epstein Island thing. I don't know. We'll see. Will Fauci ever be arrested for anything? I highly doubt it. Hose pipe ban in the United Kingdom, and that's an outside hose, not a shower head. And they're doing this to bolster their climate change narrative. I think that's the only reason they're doing it, in my opinion. And pre-approved questions only for Poilievre in his current election, and that's surprising. I'm shocked. I'm fully shocked. No, I'm not that shocked. So it is very interesting. And will Poilievre win? Probably. And will that be good for the country? Probably not. So we'll see how that one rolls out too. And how do we still not have a budget? We don't have a budget. We're going into like the middle of July, right? July 14th. So budget, schmudget. Who needs a budget, right? So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, something to think on, something to ponder. Garbage Human says, well, actually, Jonathan Wong is comparing atom bombs versus diversity, right? So here's a picture of Hiroshima. So the aftermath of an atom bomb. Well, not so bad, I guess, right? Hiroshima was able to reconstruct. So, hey, good, right? Diversity. Here's London. Woo, want. Now, I mean, the bomb has only recently gone off. Do you think it gets better from there or worse? I don't know. It seems unlikely to get better. I'll tell you that. Here's Holly Doan, and she's talking about Mark Carney's conflict. And she says Prime Minister Carney held a vast stock portfolio when he quit the private sector to run for the Liberal Party leadership and Prime Minister. Investments ran to millions of dollars worth of shares in 606 publicly traded corporations, including federal contractors. List of companies here. So if you've got a Blacklock's subscription, you can check that out. It's interesting. And Moose on the Loose has done a breakdown of the companies that Carney owned. And we talked about that yesterday as well. And a huge majority of them, 593 companies or something like that, of the 606 are American companies. Isn't that wild for a Canadian prime minister? Don't you think that you'd maybe try and invest in some Canadian companies just for show? Like, you've got a lot of money. Like, I don't know. We'll throw $1 billion into Canada, I guess. I'm going to be the prime minister. Really? No? Nothing? Okay. Seems weird. Andy Lee is concerned about Mark Carney's ethics screen and who's administering it. Because who's administering it? Well, she says Mark Carney's ethics screen will be administered by his new chief of staff, Marc-André Blanchard. And in early June of this year, Andy Lee was reporting they didn't just buy a pipeline, they bought the largest refined products pipeline by volume in the United States. The key part here is who they bought it from. One of the owners of Colonial was CDPQ, run at the time by Mark Carney's new chief of staff, Marc-André Blanchard. So who better to administer your security screen than somebody who knows all your history and knows the ins and outs, right? Knows where the proverbial bodies are buried and stuff, right? That guy'd be great at running Mark Carney's shield, right? It's weird. It seems very, very insidery to me, right? Very, very, very concerning, right? So I don't know. Do you think that this is a good idea? This is what we have to govern us. This is the only thing that we have to govern us. So I guess better hope. Michelle Ferrier is a former MP in the Conservative side, and she's responding to T. Hudson. Hudson says, how many MPs in the Conservative Party have investments with Brookfield? Those items are not under a conflict of interest issues. They're under a conflict of interest screening in case there's an issue. Is that not correct? Doesn't Poilievre have oil and gas investments? And Michelle says, every MP is required to publicly disclose all assets, investments, and debts. Mark Carney claimed he had 0 conflicts of interest during the election, and now we know he has 103. He hid behind the 180-day disclosure window and misled Canadians. This isn't just dishonesty, it's calculated deception. This is another one of those Columbo or Matlock moments where they get you and say, it's not just that you killed him, it's that you planned to kill him. And then they roll out the proof that it was premeditated, right? You planned it, and we know because of this red scarf, right? Like, oh my gosh, right? Dun, dun, dun. Oh, I've got actually that. Right? Same thing here, right? He knew that he had conflicts of interest, and he said, no, I don't have any conflicts. I don't own anything. I've sold everything. It's a blind trust, rah, 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 rah. But I don't think so, right? That's not true, because look at all these conflict of interest. So very concerning, because his words don't match what's actually happening, right? Mark Nixon is saying nothing but cash and real estate promise, but that's not true. Reality is 103 assets requiring recusal, 99.7% out of country. Blind trust, more like blindfolding Canada. So this is Mark Carney talking about what he owns and misleading people during the election. And again, ethics schmethics. What consequences? We don't need those in Canada. Come on.
I own nothing now. I came into public life at a time of crisis. I put my hand up because of the crisis, because of what's represented by that bridge, what's represented by the threats to these good men and women of Unifor and their colleagues across southwestern Ontario and across.
So the crisis happened, and then Mark Carney decided to win an election and bugger off. Right? That's pretty, right? Like, it's vacation time. He hasn't done, what's he done? Nothing, right? Like, so the crisis was in Carney's mind and in the people he's convinced minds. But again, I think our elections are rigged in the mind of the press, who he's paid to convince. This crisis evaporated the second the election was won, right? Anyway, I own nothing.
What I've done is put all my affairs in order well in advance. I own nothing but cash and personal real estate. So, and that's not going to change. In public life, that's not going to change. It's actually quite straightforward.
So then, just to be clear, then, going forward, you have no potential equity stake, no potential stock options, or any other potential future payments that you currently anticipate could come from either Strike or Brookfield.
So what I have is cash, personal real estate, and they're assets all those assets were divested into a blind trust, which is managed by a trustee, and it literally means exactly what it says. I don't know what's in it.
So, do you believe him? I don't know what's in it. No, I don't. I don't think I believe him. I really don't. Here is the mystery, and he says, the circus is complete, we're screwed. David Lametti confirms a start date as advisor to Prime Minister Carney. You remember David Lametti, he was Justice Minister, who was instrumental in a whole lot of COVID era stuff, and there's a whole lot of controversy around him. I didn't like him, and he's back. And are you surprised? No. He's a piece on the chessboard, and they want to bring him back into a position of power. Let's talk about the trade war between Canada and the United States that will be happening on August 1st. And Carney's known about for a few days, and he maintained his vacation because who needs to do anything? He'll be back to deal with it in Huntsville on the 23rd of July. So we'll talk about that then. I guess it's completely unacceptable. This is not how you deal with this problem, but here we are in Canada, and we will continue to blunder until we demand better from our leaders. And I mean, even if we demand better from our leaders, I'm not sure they'll ever deliver. CBC Watcher is talking about this. He's responding to a Toronto Sun article from the food professor, and the food professor says, everyone's suddenly a supply management expert, but few understand it. And a quote is from the food professor is, another misconception is that Trump isn't really targeting Canada's dairy sector. He absolutely is, but not because the U.S. dairy industry is desperate to access the Canadian market. In truth, our market is too small to move the needle for most U.S. producers. Rather, Trump is using the issue as a wedge, leveraging a politically sensitive topic to extract concessions elsewhere. He understands, better than many Canadians, how politically explosive this issue is for our 9,500 quota-holding dairy farmers, many of whom are among the most well-resourced in the country. And yeah, so it's interesting because Trump is driving, well, it's, again, he's almost playing an instrument, putting pressure on certain things, understanding that there's going to be a response, measuring the response, and then either putting more pressure or less pressure on that thing. And it's very interesting to watch, because usually states aren't that, they don't do that. They don't measure that close. They implement a policy almost blindly, and then when people scream and remove the government, then the policy changes. Whereas in this case, Trump is very fluid and changing things day to day. And that's change. That's interesting. And you can run a country like that? Shock. Who knew? Here's, so he's going after supply management, and he's putting pressure on Canada like he's playing an instrument, right? Here's CBC Watcher again, and this is talking about supply management. And David Clement of the Consumer Choice Center with Natasha Fatah, it is a program that should have been axed long ago for two reasons. It's the reason why the potential agreement with the UK fell through. It's the reason why European countries have been slow to ratify CETA. It was a grievance under the first Trump administration, under the Biden administration, and here it is again. The second reason why we should get rid of it is because it artificially inflates prices for Canadians on staple food items while we're in the midst of having record numbers of Canadians line up at food banks. Yep. So we should get rid of supply management. It's a bad system. It's outlived its usefulness. It doesn't do what it promises to do, and we're being screwed by it, and nobody is being responsive to this. This is exactly what I mean. Usually a policy is implemented, supply management, people get rich off of it in the short order, cronies, right? People get rich off of it because the government set up the program that way. And so they don't want to change it because their friends are getting rich off of it. And so when people scream, they can't hear them. They're like, what? Sorry, I can't hear you over this delicious cup of milk I'm drinking from, right? Like, it's ridiculous. So, and Andrew Scheer did that on the podium. So my gosh, right? If you think the Conservative Party and Andrew Scheer are going to protect you, they work for somebody else, and that somebody else gives them milk. The food professor says, at present, the dairy sector is shrinking with no clear vision to regain economic relevance. Retail prices and Trump's rhetoric are the wrong reasons to dismantle supply management, but a smart, forward-looking policy overhaul anchored in data, transparency, and market realities is overdue. Dairy farmers of Canada spend an estimated $5 to $8 per Canadian annually on advertising, one of the highest marketing spends in the country. Their presence is ubiquitous, from online platforms to Maple Leaf hockey jerseys. Unsurprisingly, this shapes how the media covers the issue. Over the years, media outlets have frequently featured voices sympathetic to supply management, often excluding more conservative voices or people who say that there's a problem with this. It's interesting, being misled by milk money. Kirk says Canada's mainstream media can find random weirdos to write stories on as to why they won't travel to the United States, but couldn't bother to ask the record food bank users to why they can't afford food anymore, right? Oh, why don't you want to travel to the United States? Oh, I don't like that Trump guy, right? So I don't know, man. It's they can't find anybody who is not able to afford food to interview, though. And it's a good point. It seems like that's an example of looking past the real issues in order to manufacture something that's not real. Here is the CBC manufacturing the same thing. Now, this is a long, boring clip because these are long, boring people who really don't care and or know they're talking about nonsense propaganda. Although this guy sniffs his own farts. This guy believes the rhetoric. This guy's a true blue, true red believer, whatever you want to call it. He's a liberal guy, I guess. I don't actually know who he is, but the way he speaks, he's talking about the difficulty of talking to and about Canadians who have family and friends in the United States, those mega Americans, right? Oh no, you've got a friend who's a mega American. And so they're trying to set up a wedge and or drive the wedge further. And it's nonsense. And again, it's boring, but it's only 1:38. It feels longer than 1:38. I promise you. After 30 seconds, you're going to think, was this a 3-minute long video? Here we go.
it's become so difficult in terms of handling the conversations we're having delicately. So talk to us about that and how you're planning on exploring that issue next hour.
Yeah, so, some time ago, before this trade war, we did a version of the topic that we're doing in the second hour, asking people about their relationships with people in the United States. And we learned a couple of things. First of all, a lot of Canadians have family and dear friends in the United States. I mean, more than acquaintances, really close friends, people that they would go and vacation with, and so there are a lot of Canadians with ties to Americans. And the second thing we discovered is how difficult it was for many of them to deal with Americans because of Trump and the MAGA movement. Especially they walk into a house where Fox News is on, and for a lot of Canadians, they kind of see that, not all, but a lot, and it seems like an alternate version of reality. And so now we have the trade war. Now we have elbows up. Now we have the Canadians who are still steadfastly trying their best to not buy American. And so what's that like? And it's summertime, right? So
It's insane is what that is. It's completely batshit insane. Bonkers. These people are bonkers. They're out of touch with reality, and that doesn't even begin to describe it. Poilievre, let's talk about the election that is going on right now. The leader of the Conservative Party, for how long, however? Are they going to keep him after he lost his seat, right? And didn't win the prime ministership that he thought he was walking into? Poilievre says, meeting the hardworking team at SCORE projects in Stettler, where they're building the heavy equipment that powers Alberta's oil and gas industry and Canada's economy. These are the skilled tradespeople and innovators creating good jobs, growing our energy sector, and helping us get government out of the way so we can deliver powerful paychecks. He can't update his election rhetoric. Powerful paychecks. Let's bring it home. Oh my gosh. Did we just enter a time warp? Here is Canadian Fred, and Canadian Fred says, is Poilievre campaigning for by-election in Battle River Crowfoot? It seems like a public marketing tour, as the questions that people want to ask are denied and candidates' town halls are refused by CPC headquarters. Here is a screen grab of an email or a communication. It says, I just heard from folks attending Pierre's meeting tonight in Stettler, Alberta. They confirmed that they were required to submit their questions in writing before being permitted to ask them. CPC HQ, Pierre Poilievre, none of the questions submitted were allowed to be asked. Is that the kind of courage you want to lead in Battle River? And so, what do you think? I mean, are you surprised? I can't say I'm surprised. Now, take it with a grain of salt. This is not 100% confirmed, Facebook official, whatever it is. This is seemingly rumors at this point in time. I haven't heard a whole bunch of people having their questions having to be submitted beforehand. But if this is happening to you, if you've heard about this, send this my way so we can further confirm it. But take it with a grain of salt, as you take everything. The internet is a crazy place, and crazy things happen, and then we find out that actually that didn't happen at all, right? Or whatever. So I try my best to keep you up to date with things that are actually happening, and also to temper that with, have some skepticism about the world, because the world is a crazy, crazy place. Oftentimes I'll preempt something with, I heard. I don't know if this is true, but and then we can discuss the thing rather than, did you know, right? Like, this is what I heard. Any validity to this? Did you hear about this? And then we can discuss it more broadly. And then when they express skepticism, then you can hit them with articles and things like that you've got, if you do have them. And if you don't, well, then it's just a discussion. But anyway, it's interesting what's going on. And again, it wouldn't surprise me if Poilievre and his team were managing the discourse between the public and Poilievre at a very high level. It wouldn't surprise me at all. So moving on a little bit, Real Robert says, this is Arizona's 2022 general election. Maricopa County election fraud officials illegally breaking into sealed election machines after they had been tested, reprogramming memory cards and reinstalling them. Election day, 59% of machines shut down on election day in GOP areas. In other words, this is how the Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs, and her co-conspirator, Adrian Fontes, overthrew the state government of Arizona. So we have videos like this, and this is, fast video of people going in and working on machines and taking them out of commission or resetting them. And we've also got images of people pulling ballots, and not in a different one, out from under a table and feeding them into machines. All sorts of, I think, damning evidence, right? If this was a Matlock, man, years ago, these people would have been locked up, but it's not, right? It's real life. And so these people act with impunity and then complain about Alligator Alcatraz. Debbie Wasserman Schultz was complaining about Alligator Alcatraz and saying that they've got people in cages. And I thought, this is ridiculous. Anyway, they rig the elections at a level that people find hard to believe. And even at that level, I think that's just a little tiny sliver. I think that they do way more than just what we know about. Like this little 5-minute thing, represents less than 0.25% of the things that they're doing that we would not believe. Okay. And so I think it's unbelievable because people have trust in a system that exploits that trust on purpose. And that's scary. It's a scary place to be. You'd hope that you don't live there, but man, I think that is where we live, unfortunately. So here's Juno News, and they say, let's do our grab bag of governance. And Juno News is reporting a senior economist at the Bank of Montreal has joined the growing chorus of frustration with Prime Minister Mark Carney's lack of transparency with public finances and his government's failure to table an annual budget despite increasing public spending. Yeah, well, we're getting screwed, man. And no budget and no conflict of interest information until well after the conflict of interest is well established, and Mark Carney's putting Justin Trudeau's fixers in place in his government, right? Thanks, Mr. Lametti. Weird. It's a weird situation, and it doesn't seem like Canadians have much of a recourse, right? It's not like the Conservatives are going to trigger an election anytime soon. It doesn't seem like they're voting with the Conservative or with the Liberals. And I asked some people about this, and people keep sharing a Northern perspective piece on this. And my response to that is, I would really like the Conservative opposition, to articulate what exactly they're trying to accomplish here without third-party mediums. Because if you can't tell your supporters what the hell you're doing by supporting, and I mean, I'm not a supporter by any stretch of the imagination. I'm a supporter of sanity returning to Canada, but that doesn't seem to be represented by the Conservative Party of Canada. But if you don't have something to articulate to your supporters about why you're doing this materially, you've got nothing. You're just going to support the Liberals while you're going to Jagmeet Singh them, right? Like Jagmeet Singh would fight the Liberals all day on Twitter and then support them in the House of Commons all day long. And so now the Conservatives are doing that. And what's the effect? How could anybody possibly trust them, right? Like what? You're going to support them in the House of Commons on all the votes, and you're going to shit talk them on Twitter. And then you're not going to mention that at all. And just hope nobody notices? Well, problem, people are noticing. But I'm censored, so oh well. Dan says, cover-up alert. The Liberals are hiding the details of the $50 million contract they gave to a high-priced consultant to run their vaccine injury support program. This follows a damning global news investigation that exposed how a firm with no credible experience in healthcare pocketed nearly $35 million while thousands of injury claims remain unresolved. Whistleblowers exposed a workplace that resembled a frat house rather than a professional health claims operation. What are the Liberals hiding from Canadians? A ton. They're hiding a lot of spending malfeasance, at least, and more. CTV News is reporting Canada's power grid is not ready for extreme weather, but the power grid's going to do just fine with everybody having EV cars in 9 years, right? Everybody's getting an EV car. Oh no, the power grid's down again. Blackouts are coming. I hope not. That would be bad. That would be a very negative outcome in a cold country like Canada. Canada's power grid is not ready for extreme weather, according to experts. So I'm disinclined to believe them. I don't think the experts have proven themselves well over the last 5 years. Anyway, here's part of the CTV article. Down power lines, flooded substations, fire-damaged poles, while Canada grapples with another intense wildfire season. Arson season, they mean? There are new concerns about whether the country's electricity grid can keep the power on during more frequent and more severe weather events. So this is now a climate change article, right? This is manufacturing a narrative. The grid that we have today has not been designed for accommodating such extreme scenarios. So they're going to put EVs on our grid. Our grid is going to struggle and have blackouts. And they're going to say, it's climate change. It's climate change, everybody. Don't you understand? This is because of the extreme weather we're experiencing. It has nothing to do with the fact that we've 200% increased the amount. 200%. We've massively increased, going to be way more than 200% increased the number of cars on our grid. And because of that, the grid can't handle it. So it's blacking out. So we should maybe rethink this EV program. No. The problem is we have to do more of the EV program because the problem is climate change and weather is changing. And that's why the blackouts are happening. So if we do more austerity, if we buy more electric cars and put them on our grid, blackouts will lessen. It is inverted. We are being lied to, and it's so obvious, and you're not even allowed to question it, because if you say, hold on a second, this doesn't make any rational sense, you people are crazy, it's the same argument as the immigration thing. They're like, you know what we need to do? Build houses. Well, you could just stop the inflow of people, and that would immediately solve it. Like right now, like we could just stop adding EVs, and then it wouldn't get worse. No. It will get worse because that will cause weather to get worse. No. It will get worse in Canada because reasons, I don't know. But the argument is the same, and they're not going to do rational things. They're just going to move forward with their ideology. Whew. Scary. What are the threats to the electric grid? EV vehicles and insane government mandates. A report from April from the North Atlantic Electric Reliability Corporation. Here's what the article actually says. NERC found that most provinces are at risk for power shortfalls during extreme weather conditions and during adoption of EV vehicles. The independent industry watchdog has also projected over half of North America will be at risk for blackouts due to a surge in electricity demand and retiring fossil fuel plants in the next 5 to 10 years. It's 2025, and there's a ban on gasoline cars in 2035, and they're expecting blackouts in 5 to 10 years. Geniuses. These people are absolute geniuses, man. How do they know? I'm kidding. Here is Martin. He says, apparently there is a business case for LNG, a very strong one indeed. And so U.S. natural gas demand for LNG exports up 20% this year. So from 2016 to now, exporting LNG has seen a massive, massive increase in the United States. Canada is poorer by at least this much because we haven't done anything about this. And this is all of Justin Trudeau's tenure. Justin Trudeau and the Liberals' tenure. They didn't do anything to enrich Canada. They, in fact, harmed Canada and were barely holding on by our fingertips, and we're about to fall off into the abyss and then just probably be eaten up by Europe or the United States. And they want to hedge towards Europe, but Donald Trump's not going to let that happen. Probably. We'll see. Canada Proud is reporting Rideau Hall, the official residence of the Governor General, is spending $350,000 on a nearly NHL-sized artificial ice rink through a sole-sourced contract. Sounds like a genius idea. I know a guy who makes an ice rink. Honestly, all sorts of money. What is it? $50 million? No, a third of $1 million, $750,000. All of this is just wasteful spending, and it is done to distract, and we don't get anything out of it. And we are not good at holding our elected officials to account, and that results in waste, bloat, overspending, and zero accountability. And that's bad. All of that's bad. And I wish that we had a fix for it that made some kind of sense, because at this point, we really, really don't. And that's unfortunate. Oh, I forgot to do that tab. Here's Brian Passafume. He says, Toronto police arrest Dominic B., 22, accused of urinating on the steps of a synagogue last month near Queen and Woodbine while shouting anti-Semitic slurs. You know what's weird, though? You know what's strange about all this? People who burn down Catholic churches and playgrounds and whatever, they don't get arrested. But people who pee on synagogues do? There's a weird thing going on in Canada, and you're not even allowed to question it. If you question it, you're going to get in trouble for noticing. And my gosh, man. Apparently Elmo noticed the other day. Somebody maybe hacked Elmo's account, or Elmo just woke up one day and was like, holy cow. Elmo's awakening. Anyway, that was funny to see. Just because it's all, I feel like something like that doesn't, maybe it's totally a coincidence. Maybe it's totally a coincidence and Elmo got hacked, totally independent of the broader narrative trying to be created. But like Elmo, the Sesame Street character, gets hacked and starts blaming the Jews. And I think that all of that kind of stuff is not done accidentally. It's not happening accidentally. Okay? And so noticing that we're being manipulated through all of this is part and parcel. The end of the show today, well, we're pretty much at the end of the show for people who are on the stream, but the end of the show today, I've got a quote from Greg that says, you don't live in the real world, you live in like a fantasy world, basically. And my addition to that, and we'll talk about it at the end of the show as well, my addition to that is that, like, if you can't see the false reality, if you can't look at it like it's a balloon in the room, like it's something separate from what you're experiencing, then you're living it. If you don't see the false reality and see it for what it is, or just see the construct of it, right? See the shape of it. That's what I try and do with this show. I'm trying to point out the shape of the false reality we live in, because I see it clearly. If you can't see it, then you live in it. And nobody, like Neo in the Matrix, he's the only one who could make the choice to step out of it, right? And you can't tell somebody that this is fake, because they won't know what you mean until they see it, until they see that break and go, oh my gosh, what the newspapers say is true is not is not true. What the institutions say is true is really like out of touch with what is really true. And so everything's like that. And that's a weird place to be. And a lot of people live there quite happily and comfortably. And that's a weird thing, man. It's a weird thing. We'll talk about the invasion, and then, oh man, I wanted to do the jobs thing too. Now we got to cut off the stream. We'll talk about the invasion because the invasion plays right into the jobs. I'll do a teaser on the jobs and then we'll cut it off. Leanne Rude says, in just the first 4 months of 2025, the Carney Liberals have admitted 817,000 new immigrants into Canada. The Minister of Immigration promised summer consultations on immigration levels, but in typical Liberal fashion, those consultations never happened. No transparency, no accountability, just more broken promises. So, oh yeah, we'll have a meeting, and then they never have a meeting and bring in 1 million people. Haha, suckers, you thought we were going to have a meeting. We just brought in 1 million people, says the Liberals. Michelle Rempel-Garner says a small town's worth of people illegally crossed the border into Canada from the United States in just a few days. The Liberals allowed them to claim asylum. They will be able to claim taxpayer-funded benefits and get health care. Liberal border management at its finest. At its finest, she says. I don't think she's kidding. Would they do anything different, these guys? Spike in asylum seekers at Quebec's Lacal border, more claims in first week of July than all of May. So interesting invasion is continuing. And Holly Doan was reporting Labor Department in briefing note to Minister Haydu acknowledged young job seekers face economic shocks, including rising unemployment. Previous cabinet allowed 101,040,000 foreign students into the workforce. So why can't teenagers find jobs this summer, which is being reported by Global News and everyone else? It's because of the failures of the Canadian federal government and their immigration system. And that is a damning report. And I think that we should fix it. I think that we have a responsibility to fix it. And if it's hard to fix it, then we should try that much harder to fix it, because it's an important thing to do. Because if we don't fix it, we are going to be paying the costs of not fixing it for a very long time. Our kids, their kids, and so on and so forth. Just the LNG. And that affects us. And we don't seem to care, right? People don't even seem to understand the lost revenue of that. And it's a big deal. So we should demand better. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody, on the stream, and we will catch you tomorrow. And for everybody left, we will continue on and we'll fill out this story. Well, I guess I should have told them before we left.